appreciation to Tracy Adams, my assistant, who was our lovely ambassador on behalf of ESUSD gathering these questions, as well as Dr. Jack Plotkin, who was the one to take a look at all the questions and organize them in some semblance of fashion. I'd like to just take a few minutes to kind of frame both the challenge and the opportunity moving forward. So as Dr. Nishime shared, this did come very rapidly. Certainly we all saw that something was going to occur and that we needed to be ready and that we took preliminary steps to plan. However, not all has been a smooth transition, and we thank you all for your patience and understanding. As we look forward to the fall, it's important to note that we don't have all the answers today that you might be looking for, but we can give it our very best answer based on all of the information we've had an opportunity to look at, read, and research. I'm a member of the Los Angeles County Office of Education Task Force to reopen schools. So as part of that responsibility, we've had an opportunity to look at a variety of documents from across the nation that can be very helpful to guide our work going forward. As a member of that task force, we're really looking at two distinct models as we start the fall. One is a hybrid model, which you hear a little bit more about later on. And then one is to continuing offering Distance Learning 2.0, which will be a new distance learning model. It will not be the program as you know it right now. There will be more consistency and fidelity to core principles for that program moving forward. It's important to note that as we guide ourselves through these various decisions, that we will be following the guidelines for the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. Los Angeles County, as of just Friday, was #1 in the state of California of all counties for the number of COVID-19 cases and the number of deaths. So Los Angeles County has had to have more restrictions and may be a little slower on some of the institutions of reopening and recovery as we move forward. So it can be very confusing to all of you parents and our community as you might look on the news and see something that is taking place in Riverside County or in San Bernardino County that they're allowing as it relates to graduations or promotions, whereas the guidance that we've received and the health directives we've received were unable to follow. So please bear with us as we hold the health directives take those seriously and are required to follow those. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Plotkin to share with us the format and begin with the question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. So yeah, we were definitely pleased to see the number of questions that have come in. We have about an hour, and generally what we've done is kind of categorize the questions into some themes. If you submitted a question, you may not hear it right exactly as submitted because there may have been several similar ones that we've kind of combined. So the first set of questions really has to do with big picture. One general pervasive theme that we see in the questions, and Dr. Moore, you just addressed some of this, but is it a need to understand what we can expect the fall to look like for our students? What are the options being considered? Two parents ask about a 14-day alternate model with 4 days in person and 10 days remote. But in general, parents want to know what to expect. And could we expect that schools open as early as July, as the governor recently suggested?
Well, the governor certainly spoke off the cuff and caught everybody off guard. Even the state superintendent and the California School Board Association had no idea that he was going to make this suggestion that schools open as early as July to help prevent summer slide and loss of learning. Just want to remind our parents that calendar for all school districts are a negotiated item, and this item was negotiated and voted on by the board. And so as negotiated, the board approved an August 26th start date, and we don't intend that to change. And in terms of how that schooling is going to look like and what the opening will look like, that's still in conversation, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moore to add some more information in this regard.
Thank you, Dr. Nusini. And thank you for this question. I think on a statewide level, we're now at the very beginning stages of stage 2 in the recovery framework for our state. Schools, it's important to note, are in stage 3. In stage 3, 4, and 5, the restrictions start to lighten up, but at the beginning of stage 3, there are significant restrictions that I'd like to share with our parents as it relates to translating guidelines for social distancing in a school setting. So as we look to the fall, we are hoping to offer a hybrid program that would be face-to-face with social distancing. But because of social distancing, it is important to note that that limits the number of students who can be in any one classroom at one time. So that will require staggered schedules. Now, in the question, they actually talk about maybe being on for 4 days and then in a distance learning for 2 weeks and then come back for 4 days. We are looking at a variety of hybrid models. They also had suggested staggered where an AM shift would come and a PM shift would come. At this point, we're probably looking at perhaps a 2-day-a-week schedule. However, we are still exploring all options related to that. It's important to note the guidance from public health indicates you must restrict the size of the class to be sure that you have maintained social distancing with students 6 feet apart or a 3-foot radius between desks. You need to try and cohort those classes and control mobility to, from in and out of the classroom. So instead of kids going to the library and kids going to Project Lead the Way, kids going to choir, any of those services should come to that student and not having students moving and intermingling and circulating. There needs to be specific guidelines as it relates to explicit protocols for hand washing and having hand washing stations available and disinfectants available for our students to use. It is likely that students and teachers will be required to wear masks as well. We need to limit large gatherings, such as in the cafeteria or out on the yard at any one time. And as I shared in my update to all of you, social gatherings such as assemblies and field trips will be prohibited initially in the stage 3 of the opening. As we move forward, we continue to watch the virus, and there could be times where there could be a resurgence of the virus. And at that time, we need to, once again, perhaps move back into a distance learning model. And that could be at any one school, or it could be a district-wide situation, depending on how the virus reacts and the current state of what is occurring in Los Angeles County. So I know this is a very different situation. What we want to do with all certainty is reconnect our students to our teachers. There is no substitute for the teacher-student connection and the face-to-face connection. So please rest assured, as soon as possible, that we can make those connections and expedite our plans, we will. But we also must behave in accordance with the health directives and be prudent as it relates to that. In addition, you also hear that we're going to be offering a full distance learning model that will be different. When we did our survey last week, which was just a brief survey just for planning purposes, we did discover that about 7.5% of our families are interested in continuing in a distance learning model. So it is the intent of the district to offer such a model for kindergarten through 12th grade students. And it would look different than what occurred in this situation, as this was for emergency purposes. So we do look to take this time to continue to improve that model. And that may be just by parent choice, or it could be for families that have an individual who is health compromised of some sort. So it will be at the option of the parent, and we will staff based on the needs of our community and our parent population. So hopefully that takes care of that, Dr. Plunkett. Thank you.
Thank you. It does. Dr. Moore, you just noted that school may be in a 2-day-a-week or some shortened model and next year. So a couple parents are asking if there could be an option to make some classes remote, such as PE, so that students can have more time for core subjects like math and English. Will the electives look the same? Is there opportunity for new electives? And then there's a couple comments about Spanish, how Spanish is tough in the distance learning format. So I'm wondering if we could address those questions.
I'm going to go ahead and take this one, or try to, and then anyone else chime in if you have something to add. I mean, we're definitely aware that some subjects and teaching styles work better than others, face-to-face versus remote learning. And Spanish, for one, is an area of concern regarding the challenge to provide the quality and the effectiveness in our current setup. And personally, I have to say, I think that my Spanish students will wimp out on speaking, whether they're teaching remotely or face-to-face, but that's a whole other issue. But seriously, I think that the unexpected benefit to this scenario that we're in now is that we have to rethink things. And in this distance scenario, and also soon with regard to the budget scenario. So that's going to force us to reevaluate and innovate and think really hard about what we present to our students and how we present it, and how we teach, where we teach, when we teach is all the factors in the mix right now. So a lot of reconsideration going on, and yes, some things will change going forward.
And Dr. I just wanted to add that it's important to note that parents have given us feedback over time, and that feedback has been really valuable. So I know based on surveys from last year that there were some concerns with Spanish at the middle school regarding homework or quality. And so we're going to look at all of that moving forward to try and make the very best decisions on how we can continue to improve.
Thank you. Several questions cite concern over the social emotional impacts on students. What are the plans to address this? Would the district consider an advisory class that meets regularly for social emotional check-ins?
So at this time, as the community is aware, the board did adopt 5 goals, and one specific goal is for social emotional learning, and it's to promote the social and emotional well-being of all students and foster a positive learning environment and culture for all. Part of that is the ruler program, and even now we have teachers and administrators who are being trained again, our third cohort of folks in the ruler program through the Yale Institute for Emotional Intelligence. Dr. Lee and I actually had an opportunity to give a case study with Dr. Mark Brackett, who is one of the developers of the ruler program regarding social emotional learning. And so this is something that we're very committed to going forward. And it was our hope that our students felt that from our teachers and our administrative team. I was very proud of the efforts I saw on behalf of the team, whether it was positive check-ins, phone calls, positive videos that went out to kids, but letting them know that we care about them and that perhaps push on content and academics was paused, and we really cared about who are you and how are you feeling right now. Another example of that would be at El Segundo High School, where they actually did a survey of their kids to say, how are you feeling? How did you feel before COVID-19 and the distance learning? And how do you feel now? And we saw actually a 20% increase in students feeling stressors. And so what are we doing to address that? That was valuable input and data for our counseling team, our teachers, so that they know how they can do a better job. And if you are having a concern about any individual or whatnot, please reach out to your principal, and they will really be sure to check in with that teacher or that student to make sure that student is getting what they need. We also have a wonderful resource in Care Solace that offers vetted resources. So please reach out to Dr. Plotkin or go on our website to take a look at those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to add on the website on the front page, there are a lot of COVID-19 related resources featured prominently there. I want to direct the next question to Ms. Janicek. Dr. Moore noted a full distance learning option. And so some questions want to know, when can parents learn more about that? And when might they have to decide whether they want to pursue it?
Thank you, Dr. Plotkin. Yes, and Dr. Moore went over this very thoroughly, and I really appreciate that. The distance learning will be a need for some families, and maybe just a request from others, and we know this. We, as she shared, the survey response was K-12, about 32 families that said, we need this program, and another 70 or so saying, we're not sure yet, we want to wait and see. So we are planning for a certain number of students, but we'll be able to evolve as we see fit. July is our goal, but everything has a little bit of a waiver on it right now, saying that's our hope, but we can't promise that we'll know for sure in July that we're ready to have people commit to it. We're going to listen to CDC, CDE, and really just know what their guidance is, and then hope to help guide our parents in what they want to decide for their child. But yes, June or July or August is when we hope to roll that out and have parents say, this is what would work for my child next year.
Thank you, Ms. Janicek. Dr. Moore did touch on some of the health and safety guidelines we are following when school returns. There's a lot of questions about specifics here. So must students and teachers wear masks? How can you inform our little guys to wear masks? What about recess and lunch? Can students be on the playground equipment? Is there extra janitorial and then finally, what might happen if a student or staff member tests positive for COVID-19?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dylan Ferris. I'm happy to take this question. Yes, Dr. Moore did go over the fact that we're following the guidelines from the Department of Public Health, and that they have issued an initial framework that depicts what the reopening of schools might look like. In addition to all of the things that she shared, which basically comes down to, we have to have less students on campus. We have to have less opportunities for students to intermingle with different groups. And so what that really does mean is, in addition to staggering the number of students that are in the classroom so that we have less folks on campus, we will be having higher levels of control when it comes to having students out on playgrounds. As was mentioned, even at the secondary level, possibly you will no longer see students that are sitting in one class period and then moving on to another class period where they're sitting at the same desk another student sat at. And more likely you'll see students stationary and protected, and teachers will be the ones that are rotating. With regard to the issue of cleaning and sanitation, we are certainly emphasizing a focus on sanitizing and disinfecting on a regular basis. We've made some investments already on some of those industrial disinfecting sprayer machines that every campus will have that will help us to disinfect large areas like playground structures more readily. But the truth is that we're facing budget cuts in the next year, so we're not in a position to increase our custodial staff. And so what you will likely see is more of a shift in the culture and an emphasis on everybody cleans. This will be everyone will be deputized. Every teacher, all of our staff will be empowered to be part of the process of cleaning. When it comes to the issue of masks on students, it is our understanding that we should be expecting our students and staff and teachers to be wearing masks. How exactly that will be enforced is yet to be determined. We're still in the process of even examining what the cost implications are for providing masks for everybody. And we certainly are sensitive to the fact that for our youngest students and some people with special needs, it'll be difficult to require people to have masks at all times, but we're looking at all of those pieces. In the event that somebody becomes ill and contracts COVID-19, we will be following the guidance from the CDC and the Department of Public Health, who have very specific guidelines for what to do in those situations. And then with regard to temperature taking, we have not come to the conclusion that we'll have somebody stationed at every door taking temperatures every student who comes into the classroom or into the campus. It is something we will, again, adhere to whatever guidance comes forward, but we certainly will be asking everybody to self-monitor, take temperatures themselves before reporting to campus. We will be taking temperatures more often of anybody who, presents to the health office not feeling well. And we will be asking people to stay home when they're sick.
Yeah, Dr. Ferris, if I could ask a follow-up question to that. Is there any change in protocol? Kid must go home. One parent gives the example that if the kid just has a runny nose and no fever, will that child have to go home?
Sure. So I think you will see a shift in the culture. Our practice has always been, if you're not infectious, if you don't have a fever, then we certainly would like to have you at school. And we really don't want to have students missing instruction. And frankly, our budget is dependent on kids actually being at school. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, I do think you'll see some shifts in this, and we want to operate out of an abundance of caution. We want people staying at home when they're feeling ill. And in light of the fact that we'll be moving into this hybrid situation, we may even see some shifts in the fact that when students stay home, they actually get to have credit for being at school because they can engage remotely.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. There are a couple questions about enrollment and permits. If students are in this hybrid model, how does this affect acceptance of permit students? Will residents be prioritized was another question. And then do students currently on permit have any reasonable assurance that their permits won't be revoked?
I'll take that question. Just because we're moving to a new methodology of educating our students doesn't change how we deal with permit students. That's regulated by our board policy and administrative regulations. And I know, according to the survey that Ms. Janicek mentioned, 99% of our families are planning to return to El Segundo Unified School District in the fall. And the 1% who are leaving because they're moving out of the area. So we anticipate a robust enrollment of our district students, but there's always room for permits. And I just want to point out to parents that Administrative Regulation 5117 lays out 6 reasons to revoke a permit. And so I would refer parents to that administrative regulation so that you have confidence that that is what the district and the board will follow. So everything that's in place now will continue to be in place regardless of whether it's in a distance education mode or a hybrid mode or back on campus full time. So that hasn't changed, and we'll continue to be regulated by our own policies and procedures.
Thank you. What are the plans for summer learning, including extended school year for students in special education? And then a parent asks if a freshman study skills class could be offered by ED.
I'll take that one. Yes, plans are in place for extended school year for students with an individualized education plan. That's the same model as before, except for it's virtual. Students will be interacting with their teachers daily, and it's a 4-day a week for 5 weeks. So we're very fortunate to be able to continue with that. We also have a wonderful Ed Foundation that has created the Ed Academy. And the wonderful thing about this program is it's taught by our teachers, led by instructors that actually know what is needed for our students to be prepared for the next year or to make sure that they have the skills that they need. These classes are driven by interests and by teachers. So that question about freshman guided studies, that was a wonderful question and should be recommended. I will make sure the Ed Foundation knows. But if you have ideas or needs, please let them know. They're offering classes this summer at a discounted price to help out our families, and we really appreciate them doing so. For everybody else that is not able to attend or not wanting to attend, we're going to send out summer resources and ideas for families to have and use as they like.
Thank you, Ms. Janicek. There's a question if ESUSD has ever considered a year-round school program and what would need to be done for that to be considered.
Hi again, this is Dylan Ferris. And to my knowledge, El Segundo has not ever considered a year-round program before. I do appreciate this question because it gets at potential strategies for reducing the number of students on campus. And just to give our viewers at home a little bit of background, historically, year-round school calendars are a measure that schools might take when they're overcrowded. So when schools are over-enrolled and they have more students than they have classroom space, they might adopt a year-round program where students are on multiple tracks, and those tracks are staggered so that you never have the entire population on campus at any one time. You might have a 3-track system and you only have 2/3 of your student population on campus at any one time. To my knowledge, we haven't faced overcrowding in El Segundo in recent years, so that's not something that we've looked at. It's not something that we're looking at moving forward at this rate, although I do appreciate that it would be a strategy for helping us reduce the number of students on campuses. It does not really get to the issue of class size, which is first and foremost one of the things that we're attempting to address. As far as what it would take to implement, obviously there are collective bargaining issues around that, and certainly some exploration to determine if that is something that would work for our community. Again, it's not something we're considering at this time, but I would also say that nothing is off the table as we explore all possible solutions.
Dr. Ferris, while we're talking about schedules, a parent asks if the distance learning format will have any impact on school calendars, for instance, when spring break is, when school starts, ends.
So the only thing I'm certain of is that I'm not certain of anything. I think that was Descartes. So at this time, our plan is to adhere to the school calendar. As Dr. Nishime mentioned, we are adhering to our start date for the school calendar as of right now, and we don't anticipate that we would be making adjustments throughout the year to any of the other dates. That being said, as we've learned over this past year, you can't plan for everything, and we are going to be nimble and responsive, and we'll do what has to be done in the event that anything changes.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Dr. Moore, I'm going to shoot this one over to you. We're obviously in an unprecedented time. One parent asks, thinking big picture, does the district wish it did anything differently over the past 10 weeks?
Yes, yes to that. This is a great question because it's an opportunity to reflect. And so as our team looks back, I think one of the keys that we see is there was more consistency when we had face-to-face instruction. So when I went from class to class and visited, I could see cognitive guided instruction from room to room to room. I could see readers workshop and writers workshop at the elementary level. What we learned was that those approaches don't necessarily translate well in a distance learning environment. And then when you take into consideration a child's attention span, and that also plays a part. So what we learned was our primary families are struggling. More responsibility is having to be played by the parents to keep the student engaged. And that's been a hardship. That was not necessarily what folks signed up for. And we understand that. We have masterful teachers here in our district, and that mastery in the classroom delivery may not have translated to the distance learning model. I would love to have seen more consistency across the board on a grade level or a course or a department. So we continue to evaluate, principals continue to have those conversations. We continue to strongly encourage our teachers to move further along the continuum. The research is very clear. Having students look at a learning management platform for an assignment and saying, email me your questions is not effective as face-to-face. So we understand there's room for improvement there. We are continuing to evaluate and look to refine and build upon these lessons as we begin our programming this fall. In addition, we learned that we can pull together in a time of crisis, which was positive and a positive outcome. What I'd love to see is some more consistency with learning platforms. We've gotten a lot of feedback from parents that it's a little confusing to navigate this or that. and could we have more consistency? So the map looks the same, right? So you don't have to navigate 3 different tools or all of those things. So anyway, hang in there with us, folks. Thank you for your patience and understanding, and thank you for being that teacher at home to our primary grade parents. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, that's a good segue because the next set of questions have to do with specific teaching and learning practices. So a couple parents are asking, why can't there be a more formal schedule or structure for classes? For example, a schedule that has a student following her normal set of classes and periods throughout the day.
I'll take this one. So, you know, we certainly understand in an ideal situation, I think we might be wondering, why couldn't we take the existing educational program and structure and just move it into everyone's living room, right? Let's keep that 8 to 3 schedule and operate as we always have, just remotely. And I think what we need to remember is that we are operating in an emergency scenario right now, and that our teachers and our staff are really in the same boat as all of our students and family are at home. Many of our teachers are at home with their own children who they do not have childcare for. Many of them have very, very young ones that they're providing childcare for throughout the day. At my house, I can tell you it's a battle for the internet, as I have 2 kids that are on their own learning programs and my wife who's also trying to teach. So, you know, expecting everybody to immediately transition and be able to keep that same schedule is just unrealistic given the emergency nature of this. The program as we have it right now, quite honestly, is a Band-Aid. It's not something that we would put in place for a long-term ideal setup, but it is something that is getting us through this emergency scenario. We've given some flexibility to our teachers to be able to execute their programs. And, you know, again, this is coming from a place of addressing the emergency.
I'm going to add to that if I can take a minute, because I've had a lot of conversations about this with various parents, and my own brain rotates around this a lot. So again, I like Dr. Ferris is saying, it's a totally valid idea. It makes sense to sort of progress the way we do in school, but that only works if we know that all 25 classrooms involved in each session, 25 classrooms meaning each individual student's household is a classroom, plus the teacher's household is a classroom. So if you know all those can align, sure, we could all be on the same schedule at the same time, but that doesn't always work. And I will say, the middle school and the high school have offered scheduled outlines that are not unlike what they do in physical school, both as suggestions for households that want to follow a more structured schedule, and also so that teachers won't offer live options on top of each other if they choose to host them. And clearly, the management of online time is a bigger issue for the younger students who might need more supervision. They might lack the ability to sit still. They might lack technical skills. They might be shy. They might need that supervision that, again, a guardian may or may not be available to support at a certain time of day for whatever's being scheduled. So these are all things to take into consideration. And I will say that the one survey went out already that asked for impressions of what manner of schooling our students and families are hoping to utilize in the fall, if there's room for choice at that time. The district is actually working on another survey to assess more widely what our students and families' experiences have been in this time, and all of that are going to be taken into account moving forward. Again, if we get to the scenario in which distance learning is purely a choice, then more structured timelines, platforms, scenarios will be established from the beginning, not the Band-Aid scenario we're talking about now. All of that will have everybody buying in and participating and following committee-formed, predetermined guidelines of expected workflow, processes, timelines, all of that, if they choose to participate in that kind of learning, knowing what they're getting into right from the start, not the cold start that we all had in this scenario. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Kind of to stay in this vein, there's a number of parents who've asked, can there be more video conferencing right now? Can there be more conferencing in small groups so that teachers can provide more feedback to students to increase learning? That's for this year. And then along with that, is it going to look the same next year if we're in a hybrid model in terms of how much video conferencing and what schooling looks like?
Yeah, I think yes to all of that. So I do believe that all along our team has been working with our teachers who have different levels of comfort regarding being online, and that we continue to invite them to take on a new risk. When we actually started this school year, I invited our teachers to take a risk in regards to innovation. Well, if this isn't the time, I don't know what is. And so I continue to invite and encourage and allow them to take those risks in a safe space. Now more than ever, our kids need to see their teachers. All my correspondence that I send to parents go to our teachers as well. And so the messaging is consistent. We are here, we are all committed to the cycle of improvement, and we all have to take that very next step. I know for some of us today, this might be outside our comfort zone, hosting our first town hall, but we're here today because we need to be sure that we're communicating to all of you. So thank you again for your patience, and we will continue to strive to get more connections and face-to-face time with our teachers, whether it will be and the school face-to-face or online through video conferencing and facilitating small groups of students.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Next question, to do distance learning effectively, teachers obviously have to adopt a different approach. It's going to look different. Some parents are asking what supports are currently being provided to enhance teacher skills around distance learning. What are the plans for summer professional development, if any, to prepare for distance learning in the fall? And is along the same vein, is the district working with any outside agencies or partners who have experience in this field?
I think this is a really important question. As Dr. Moore just alluded to, this is some of our educators, and they're very comfortable in their classroom, but teaching from home on different platforms, it's a new world. And just like it is for our parents and students, for some, it was an easy entrance, and for others, it's a little bit more challenging. We're very fortunate in El Segundo to be small and to be really closely connected. So we have leaned on our sites, our administrative instructional leaders. They meet with their teachers once or twice a week at least, in whole group or in small groups. As a leadership team, we meet once a week to look at what's working, what's not working, how to adjust and how to adapt. We sent out a survey in the very beginning, right out of the gate, and said, what do you need help with? You're online, help you. And we have two incredible coaches that have jumped right in. We hold ed tech sessions. They provide one-on-one coaching and just support in the needs, and even just sharing great ideas. We have teachers that have been incredible rock stars that we didn't know some of the things they were already doing. So we're learning from one another, providing the support. And then we also are very fortunate to be a part of the League of Innovative Schools. I think that has really opened up our doors and conversations on a national level. So I think in our conversations with them, we're learning what's working, what isn't working, sharing best practices. Some of our partners that we're working with have said, hey, how can we help? What professional development can we provide for free? Let's open up free license. Let's help you. So we're very fortunate in many ways. We know that we have to have a consistent professional development plan moving into the fall, and that will be with streamlining some of our practices so that we can really support everybody, including our parents and students. So I think we've done a good job providing support for teachers, but I think teachers have really just done an outstanding job sharing, jumping in, and trying new things.
Thank you, Ms. Janicek. While I got you, I'm going to follow up with this one. Some of the parents ask about shifts in pedagogy that we may see. One asks if more writing can be incorporated, as that seems to lend to distance learning. Another asks if there's going to be any shift towards more personalized learning. Can you address those questions?
Sure, in a limited fashion. I think this is the perfect opportunity to really be more cross-curricular, which would include writing and other subject areas. And there's no choice to be more personalized within this venue because you're interacting with students online. They're at different levels. We have an incredible program called AMPed in our school district that has really led the way. And I think with watching how well their programs rolled out and how supportive it was for individualizing instruction for our teachers and for our students. I can see, I'm a parent, so I'm watching this side by side too. And I just feel like this is our opportunity to really personalize learning for our students by engaging them. And then also with the collaboration piece, even through technology, I think that's really important. And a lot of that does have to do with writing. So writing is a very important focus we're going to continue with through our planning into the fall.
Thank you. Several questions and comments note that some teachers seem to go above and beyond in this environment, kind of as you just said. Ms. Janicek, there are some rock stars out there, while others take a more passive approach. We've received an abundance of praise for the work our teachers are doing. However, one parent noted a perception that ESUSD has told teachers just to do the minimum. Another parent asked how teachers are being held accountable to their teaching. Are there any performance metrics in use?
Hey, Dylan Ferris again. At the risk of sounding a little defensive about this particular question, I want to just kind of reiterate what our situation here is. And, that is that, with very little notice, we took our staff and essentially asked them to change what their job is, right? They had to pivot to this online learning model pretty much instantly. And frankly, we're very proud of the work that they've been doing. And I think that, as we've monitored many of our neighboring school districts and what they've done, I would put up ours up against any district as far as what we've been able to accomplish here. That being said, we recognize that there is a learning curve for a lot of our teachers when it comes to this particular medium. We have different levels of proficiency amongst teachers when it comes to this online instruction model. And quite honestly, we have a number of teachers who had fears and anxieties about the liabilities and dangers that come along with moving into this online learning model. And they're not unfounded. All of us I'm pretty sure most of you have been aware that we have had some negative experiences with the Zoom bombing that has occurred. And these are very real concerns and fears of our teachers. So there have been some teachers that are not as comfortable taking those risks, and for good reason. Within the first week of our programs going online, we sat down with our collective bargaining units and we did set out some parameters and some minimum standards for what we expect of our teachers. But what I would say is by no means is that what our expectation is. We are encouraging our teachers, as Dr. Moore said, to take risks, put themselves out there. We've pledged to hold them harmless and protect them even when something might happen, like one of these Zoom bombing situations. And I just would like to reiterate that by and large, we're proud of our teachers. And as we continue these learning modalities or instructional approaches, you're going to see our teachers get stronger and stronger in this regard. As far as metrics, our principals are staying in touch with our teachers. They're meeting probably more often than they were meeting, even when we were, on school sites. I do know that our principals are jumping into some of their teachers' lessons and seeing them firsthand. So I have no doubt that we're being responsive to concerns that come up and that our principals know what's going on with their teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Dr. Moore in her opening remarks did allude to our platforms and apps and utilization right now. There's some questions about what learning platforms and programs are being considered for next year. And is there a way to have fewer platforms or more consistency? And also, are there plans to use any of those platforms to remediate any gaps in learning?
Thank you. Yes, this honestly was a need we had prior to distance learning, and this has helped accelerate what we need to do. We have this on our agenda for our technology committee that is a district-wide committee made up of administrators, teachers, parents, and then we consult with students also. And this was going to be our next task. It's important. We know that we need teachers to be able to be on the same platform to provide the support that they need. We need parents to know how to find the information for their child and how to help. We're on a team together, so we want to alleviate all of that anxiety of going from one platform to another. So yes, we are gathering feedback from teachers. There will be a survey going out, as Ms. Zarnecki shared earlier, that will be asked questions about what works best for your learner, whether at home or in school. How is it helpful in navigating on the platform? What are the important pieces to that? So we will be gathering input so that we can narrow it down. I don't know that we can do one consistent platform, as it's very different for younger children and older children. But we are looking at narrowing it down to 1 or 2 platforms for that very reason. We also are going to be looking at the tools we're looking at and our conferencing. So we want to make sure we're streamlining everything so that we can completely support what we are putting out there into your students' hands. I think that's it. I think we just really want to make sure that we also have that information in a timely manner so that we can train teachers over the summer and it rolls out smoothly in the fall.
Thank you. You mentioned parent support a little here. Will there be any district or school provided support for parents on how to access technology in this new format, or support for parents in general just to help their students at home and know if they're meeting standards?
I know this is a great concern to parents, and understandably so. Not only has the school district struggled to help teachers, but I know parents are out there struggling to help support their students as well. So I know in the past we've held workshops for students in terms of technology and cybersecurity and other topics of interest. And I don't expect that to change. The board is certainly committed to having the school district continue with that kind of support with parents. Probably will be held virtually or done in different formats, but whatever parents need, we want to be sure that that support system is there, not just for the teachers and their professional development, but I think there's a great need for parents and their professional development as we enter this new season of educating our kids. And as Ms. Jancic said, we're looking at 1 or 2 platforms, and so we can begin to consolidate the kind of training that parents need, and they won't be having to adapt to a lot of different platforms. So this is going to be a conversation that'll continue through the summer, and certainly in the fall, each school will have their parental orientation days, and I would expect that decisions will have been made by then, and orientation will be provided for students in terms of the platform that the school is going to be used and how it works and how to support their child. And also, I know one of the frustrations that parents have expressed is the fact that they'll go on to PowerSchool and they don't see any updates. The teachers haven't updated the information, so they don't know how their students are doing. They can't evaluate the progress, and that's a real frustrating position for parents to be in. So we are going to be requiring that teachers update that regularly. So when you check in on PowerSchool, you'll know how your child is doing, and if there are any concerns, that can be addressed to the teacher, and any support systems, scaffolding that we can provide to make sure that the student succeeds. We want to make sure that that is available. So we'll be looking at all of these things during the summer, and please expect that during that orientation, we'll provide the information that you're looking for, and we'll be soliciting your input as we move forward in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Many of our students are transitioning from preschool to kinder, elementary, middle, or middle to high, and several parents are asking about the regularly planned transition activities. How will these be handled?
I'll take this one because I've had a few students make those transitions, not in this time, obviously, but it's definitely not something we would want to do virtually. But since we may not have a choice, I know that each unit has done something differently, or each school level has done something differently. So let me just review what I have learned. For the incoming TK and kinder students, really the only component that those families have missed out on so far this school year, or for the incoming school year, is the classroom visits. Both elementary schools created PowerPoints with information for parents that are on their websites, and the schools have also recorded virtual tours for their classrooms as a welcome. But of course, no one really needs to worry about that until we know we're all welcome back on campus to see the actual classrooms in person. But those are there for some warm-ups for our TK and kinders. For the students that are transitioning to middle school, luckily the current 5th graders are probably more comfortable with online stuff than the younger kids, and they have met with administrators online and counselors via virtual meeting already. to share about what the new school is going to be like and class choices and all that. There is likely a virtual tour coming up of middle school as well, but again, doesn't really matter until we're welcome back onto campuses, and a refresher will be happening when we actually get to do that. The web program, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's where we match up older students with younger students to serve as their guides or role models in coming into a new school. That will continue in some virtual manner until we can do those kind of things in person. And the school is actually trying to figure out who those student leaders in the web program will be right now, or beginning to select them right now. So that's our look at middle school. And then those shifting into high school, luckily the counselors got to visit the middle school. The high school counselors visited the middle school before stay-at-home orders happened. And so they got to introduce how to choose classes and electives and all those things. At the high school, there's also a program called Link, which is much like the web program, but next level up. And that will continue as well in whatever capacity they're allowed to interact going forward with maybe individual Zoom meetings or small group Zoom meetings to welcome and meet each other and interact, and to also help create the schedule of classes. So all that's coming. And again, easier for the older kids than the youngers to do this, but we do what we can. So really, all of our parents should watch their email for whatever address you have registered with the schools to make sure that any communications about all this are coming to you. And if you think you're missing something, you're not sure about something, don't hesitate to reach out via email to the administrators if you can't find your answers to your questions on the school websites. There's a lot there to be read, but definitely reach out if you're at all concerned or confused.
Thank you. I got a couple specific questions that have to do with data the district has gathered. So one parent asked about the data on families who need or require access to technology, and a few parents are wondering what ESUSD can do to support families who can't secure devices or can't get internet access.
Fortunately for El Segundo, we are a one-to-one program for 6th through 12th graders. So all of our middle school and high school students did have access with a technology device. Our elementary students, thanks to our Chevron grant and Ed Foundation, we were able to have Chrome at site on our school sites for 3rd through 5th graders. So students that did not have a device or needed a device to work on their programs were able to loan one, and we had a total of 137 loaned devices between the two elementary schools. Some of those were iPads at the lower TK through 2nd grade. Other than that, they were Chromebooks at the 3rd through 5th. And I think that was the question. Oh, internet access, sorry. We did check with every single family at all of our schools. There were a handful of students at the high school that needed access. They have now connected and they are working remotely. We provided all the information we could, and we're offering to support them in any kind of way. We had one student that still was utilizing public sites and continues to do so, but we have the support to be able to provide Wi-Fi for them through the free programs.
Thank you. What do the data say about amount of schooling and workloads for students right now? Have the schools checked in with the students?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I know that at the high school level, a survey to the students said that about 75% of them feel they're working between 3 to 6 hours a day, which that sounds like you're saying within the school day right there. About half the students, however, say they're more stressed than they were before this whole thing happened, while about 20% feel less stressed. So you can see there's data showing people are kind of all over the place. But I will say that the vast majority of students who identify their stressors are a combination of school and personal situations that they're dealing with now, which again goes back to why we focus on the social emotional well-being of our students right now more than demanding the certain academic rigor that we would if we were in a regular school situation. This is why things that we do are so important, like the hold harmless agreement that we have set up, having time for personal check-ins with teachers and students, and all the strategies that we talked about earlier with Ruler are now more than ever super important. Looking at the middle school, the majority of the guardians who took the survey there report that their students are working 3 to 5 hours per day. About 25% say students are working 5 to 8 hours a day. and a small minority are working 1 to 3 hours. At the elementary level, it's all over the place, which is not surprising due to the wide range of developmental stages exhibited in our younger students. So some guardians say the work is way too much and they'd like to dial it down a little. And others are saying they want more time. They want more video conferencing. They want more anything to keep their kids busy and focused on something. And I will say that all teachers have tried to adjust wherever possible when they've been asked to do so, to create more individualized, personalized plans when it's too much. And the district has definitely offered plentiful resources to the students whose families feel like they're not getting enough or they're not being challenged enough at this time. There's lots of good stuff out there for them to do. I will say as a rule, general guideline, teachers are attempting to stay within their unit plans and lesson planning as if they were in session, with, of course, some adjustments and reimagining where needed. They're focused on core understandings and essential standards, and they're trying to follow what the school guidelines are for the maximum work time per grade level, not pushing too much. Trying to respect all those timeframes that we all agreed upon and set policy on before we got into this scenario. So here's one thing we have to reconsider at this time. Now more than ever, we parents are getting a sense of how our child works as a student. And I personally appreciate the insight at home. While I know I can no longer guarantee that my boys will be busy from 8:30 to 2:30 or so, I can see how efficient or how distracted they can be in any given moment. And that, of course, affects how long they're going to spend on their schoolwork. So again, whatever the time commitment is from students, the hold harmless, the concern about social emotional well-being, all of that is our priority right now. And as I mentioned earlier, this will come up again in the survey that's coming next from the district, talking about assessing the student and family experience, what it's been and what they hope it can be. And all of this is going to be taken into account when planning the future needs or requirements. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. And we're coming up on about an hour right now. We're on our last set of questions. They're kind of miscellaneous questions. They drill down into some specifics. So hopefully we can get through these in an efficient manner. There's questions about childcare, especially if students aren't going to be attending 5 days per week or if it's a modified day. Will TLC be open for summer? And what about fall? And are there any options for households that will have two working parents? Ms. Lenz, we're not getting.
Okay, how about now? Okay, sorry about that. So it's always been our intent to reopen TLC and childcare when possible. As Dr. Moore mentioned earlier in the presentation, there are Los Angeles County Department of Public Health restrictions around schools. There are similar restrictions around childcare. So the LA County Department of Health will dictate both when we can reopen TLC and also what the program will look like. So we will have restrictions around social distancing, restrictions on class size, and on the ability for classes to mingle that will affect our staffing and also our room use and could affect our fees. But we are well into developing a plan for reopening, so we are ready as soon as we are permitted to reopen.
Thank you. I knew we'd have a question for you somewhere in here. So I'll give this one to you too. Some parents are asking about field trips like Outdoor Science School, Ocean Safety Day, and other trips planned far in advance. How or when will we know if those are on, and will schools be refunded if they've already paid?
Right, so Dr. Moore mentioned at the beginning that field trips are, I believe, part of the phase 3 of reopening. So we'll be waiting for those guidelines before we can commit to any field trips. When the new guidelines come out, our vendors for those experiences will also have to analyze what kind of programming they can give given the restrictions they'll have. And we will then in turn have to determine if that programming meets the needs of our students. But given the budget challenges we anticipate in the next year, we will not be able to commit to any field trips where the deposit is not refundable, just to make sure that we are able to get those refunds if for some reason the trip or experience can't happen.
Thank you. How will the district be handling the requirements for high school PE that freshmen and sophomores typically take, and class credits to be earned for sports for the current semester?
My My quick and easy answer is we don't know. We do not have guidance yet from the county or the state. And this spring, we were given a waiver to actually take away the minimum requirements for physical education. And our PE teachers have still been pushing out wonderful activities. We hope all of our families are still participating and getting that much needed physical exercise. We don't know what the requirements will be for the fall. Once we start knowing, we're creating different scenarios just in case, but once we know, we'll be communicating to all of our families.
Thanks. On that topic, what about sports for the fall and team sports and also then maybe for the spring?
So this one this one definitely is another one that's bittersweet. I believe sports is just another wonderful opportunity for learning for kids. Students that get involved in clubs and sports have life lessons that help them develop the qualities that we have outlined in our graduate profile to become self-directed, resilient individuals. So I regret to share that team sports will not be permitted, no contact sport. Where we can have distancing and infection control maintained, perhaps in something like cross country, maybe we could start the golf team this year, and certainly perhaps swimming in the future. And that at this point in the first phase of the reopening, spectator free as well. So as you see those kinds of regulations on our professional athletes, those same types of things have to do with our students as well. So please know these are things that we know are an integral part of a high school experience, and we are continuing to watch and monitor the guidance that we receive from both the county office and Department of Public Health. So it would be important to note that what is true for the fall could be different for the winter, could be different for the spring. So we'll have to reevaluate throughout the year, and there will not be a one size fits all for the whole school year. We'll reevaluate as based on the behavior of the virus at that time.
Thank you. We have some questions specific to technology. One of them is, can AirPrint be enabled on iPads? Our kids have iPads grades 6 through 12. Another parent asks if there's any plan to give our younger students emails so that the teachers can contact them directly.
Yes and yes. So we are we are able to enable the iPad AirPrint. However, we're not able to support the technology at home. So what we are going to do is open it up for our families to be able to navigate it with their printer at home, but obviously we can't come into the home and help fix those problems or give guidance on that because of all the different machines, etc. So yes, that is something we're going to open up at the request. I'm glad someone brought it up. And then we also wanted to, we do have elementary, we have our entire student population with district created emails. We have not rolled out TK through second grade yet because we want to do everything to ensure their 100% safety online and privacy. So our intention is to have that going out in some capacity in the fall, but we are not ready 100% to roll it out for TK through second grade quite yet, but yeah, coming.
Thank you. And you just mentioned safety and privacy. There's some questions about what protections ESUSD is putting in place to protect our students in this more digital environment. How are we protecting their privacy?
So I reached out to our district technology guru, Mr. Gauna, and he wanted to share that we have devices for the iPads and Chromebooks are being filtered, managed, monitored, and protected through the web filter and continuous web experience at home. The web filter provides a layer of security against cyber threats for security and uses decryption so that hackers can't intercept information being transmitted. You can see why I have to read this. The district's web filter follows all of the Children's Internet Protection Act. Mr. Gauna and I work diligently every single year, making sure we have everything up to date. We do not bring on a company that does not promise our safety through their agreements on the back end. We also make sure that all of our families are aware when they register in the fall, they all sign off on our publication release so that they know If they say yes, their student could be used in publications such as internet, Herald pictures, or things of the public nature with the student's picture and only first name. We never put the last name on student images. And if we do have a student in let's just say a big concert or something, and we have a student in there that has checked they don't want to be, before airing, we call that parent and say, would you be okay with this? And if they aren't, then we find a way to not have them in that production. So we take it very seriously. We know this is a very sensitive subject, and we want all of our kids to be 100% safe.
Thank you, Ms. Janicek. And we are down to our last question. So some are asking if there's an opportunity for parents to provide more input into technology use and technology policies. And then on that note, will there be opportunity for parents to serve on committees to provide input in other areas in general in this new environment?
I'll take that one because I'm one of those parents that has done that regularly for the last decade. And I will say that I know that in the recent history, when some quick decisions, quick turnarounds had to require small input, I know that the schools, the individual sites in the district have leaned upon standing parent committees like school site council and PTAs to look at some of the discussions they were having about temporary grading scenarios and some of the technology concerns. And this collaborative effort, as you know, is something we do all the time. We have different committees that focus on technologies that we already talked about today, that have parents, health and wellness, the LCAP, a few other things that I can't think of off the top of my head right now, but there's lots of opportunity where parent input is important and welcomed. And I know that the sites will continue to use parents wherever they can. And the survey we just did, the survey that's coming up, are vital to have as many people as possible participate in. Because obviously, if people don't tell us what their experience and their perspective is, we can't know that we're representing their needs and concerns as well as we could if they did participate. So please, everybody, make sure you're checking your emails and doing those surveys. And again, reaching out by email directly if you have a concern or some expertise to offer is always welcome. So please do that.
Thank you so much. So that rounds out our questions for this afternoon. Panelists, thank you so much for your insights and for being here, and our community in general. We really appreciate you tuning in. I will, at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Moore for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Plotkin. Thank you for doing a great job moderating. Really appreciate it. And thank you, panelists. And thank you to the 420 people who came to our town hall. So I am beyond thrilled that we have that level of interest and engagement. This has to be by far the very best event as it relates to having people come and be present. And this even exceeds our town halls that we've had collectively when we've gone to each and every site. So thank you, parents, for your interest. Thank you for your questions. Once again, I just want to say that this is an unprecedented time, and I each week try to find moments of gratitude. Think if you were in our shoes. Take a moment and just think of the challenges. If this is the business that you own, and you are now having to shift and say, we're going to need a new instructional approach. And by the way, not one, but two for the fall. And we're going to need to address loss of learning. And we're talking about kids. And we're going to need new health and safety standards equally applied across every school. And we're going to need student supports. And what are you going to do when a resurgence of this virus occurs? And on top of all of that, you have a significant budget reduction that you're going to have to plan for. So all I'm going to ask is please know that we are grateful for your kids and they matter to us. And we will continue to be thoughtful in having conversations and making plans. But this is truly unprecedented. It's a fluid situation. It's ever evolving. And so please continue to provide us some patience, understanding, and kindness. We're absolutely doing the best we can on behalf of your kids. And we will continue to do that. We really care. Thank you for being here today, and take care and be safe and healthy.